I asked my wife if she had cheated on me on her deathbed. So she told me the truth, and I lost it. She looked me dead in the eye, tubes in her nose, machines humming in rhythm with her shallow breaths, and whispered, "Yes, once. And I never told you because I knew it would break you." I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just stood there, staring at the woman I'd spent 20 years loving, and realized I had no idea who she really was. My name is Laban. I'm 46 years old, and I've been married to my wife, Winnie, since we were both 25. We met at university. She was the loud, beautiful, ambitious girl everyone wanted to sit next to in group projects, and I was the quiet guy in the back, always scribbling in notebooks, dreaming about building something real. Not just an engineering class, but in life. A family, a business, a name. Winnie noticed me when no one else did. That's how it always starts, right? She liked that I listened. She said I made her feel calm, like the storm in her life didn't have to rage all the time. I worshipped her, not in a pathetic way, or maybe it was, but it felt good to have someone like her choose someone like me. She was magnetic. I felt lucky every day. We got married right after graduation. She got a job at a marketing firm. I started my own small construction company. She made more money than I did for the first couple of years. I never minded. We were building together. Or at least, that's what I thought. Now here's the part I've never said aloud until now. Around our 10th year of marriage, I started to sense distance. I'd walk in after a 12-hour day, covered in cement dust, and she'd barely look up from her phone. Her laugh, once so free around me, was now reserved for WhatsApp messages and late-night calls with coworkers. I asked once who she was texting so much. She said, "You wouldn't know him. He's from work." The way she said it, I felt stupid for even asking. Like I was the jealous, insecure husband in a bad movie. And maybe I was. I brushed it off, told myself not to be dramatic. People grow. Work gets busy. Passion fades. We had 2 kids, a mortgage, responsibilities. Not every night would be movie kisses and breakfast in bed. But I felt her slipping. One night, she came home late from a client dinner, and I noticed she'd changed her perfume. I pointed it out, trying to sound casual, not accusatory, and she just said, "Well, I'm not allowed to wear something new now." That moment haunted me for years. Not because of the words, but because of the way she said them. Like I had no right to notice her. Like I was intruding on a version of her life I wasn't part of. Still, I stayed quiet. Provided. Loved her. That's the thing about men like me. We endure. We push down the doubts. We hold everything up. The family, the finances, the facade, while the person we love rewrites the story in the background. Years passed. Things even out. Or I got numb. I don't know. The kids grew. My business grew. I even won a few local contracts that finally put us in a better place financially. She softened again. Started thanking me more. Holding my hand in the car. I thought we had survived the rough patch. Until last year, when Winnie was diagnosed with cancer. It was sudden, aggressive, and cruel. She went from healthy to skeletal in 6 months. Watching her fade was the hardest thing I've ever endured. She was only 44. It wasn't fair. She hadn't even seen our youngest graduate. And during those months, I was there. Every day, every night. I held her hair when she vomited. I changed her clothes. I shaved her head when it all started falling out. I whispered that she was still the most beautiful woman in the world, even when she cried because she didn't believe it. And she softened toward me in a way I hadn't seen in years. She started apologizing for little things. For how she used to snap. For the times she shut me out. She said, "You were always the good one, Laban. I hope you know that." I'd smile. I'd say, "We're all just doing our best." But something inside me, that gnawing doubt that started years ago, never fully went away. And one night, when she was weak and half dreaming, she whispered a name. A man's name. Well, I didn't recognize. I let it slide the first time. But it came up again a few days later when she was lucid. I asked her gently, "Winnie, who's Joel?" She paused for just a second too long, then said, "Someone from long ago." I nodded, pretended to let it go. But it boiled inside me, and I hated that it did. Hated myself for needing answers from a woman who was dying. What kind of man interrogates his wife when she's got weeks to live? But it wasn't interrogation. It was desperation. Desperation to understand the truth before it was gone. Before she was gone. So, on one of her final nights, when it was just the 2 of us, the kids asleep, the nurse is gone, I held her hand and I asked, "Did you ever cheat on me?" She blinked slowly, turned her face to me, and said yes. Once. And I never told you because I knew it would break you. That moment felt like the world cracked in half. I had braced for it. Half expected it, but hearing it, the final confirmation, was a blow I didn't realize would knock the air out of my soul. I stood up, pushed my chair back, walked to the window, stared into the black night outside the hospital wing. Was it Joel? I asked, still facing the glass. Silence. Then, yes. How long? Just a few months. During that time, when we were fighting, I thought we were done. You told me you loved me. I did. You said we'd rebuild. I thought we could. Did you ever plan to tell me? I wanted to so many times. But then the kids. And then you were doing so well. And you were so kind. I didn't want to ruin everything. I turned slowly, looked at her lying there. Not as a patient, not as my wife, but as a stranger who had been living beside me for 20 years. And here's the part one never expected to say. I didn't scream. I didn't curse. I didn't even ask why. Because in that moment, I knew the why didn't matter. The betrayal wasn't just the act. It was the years after. The silence. The pretending. The let's move forward, built on a lie I never agreed to carry. I said nothing else that night. Just sat beside her. Held her hand again because it was trembling. And when she dozed off, I quietly left the hospital, drove home, and cried harder than I've ever cried in my life. Not for the infidelity, but for the life I thought I had. And for the man I now realized I'd been, loyal, devoted, and blind. The next morning, I was back at the hospital by 6 a.m. Not because I wanted to be, because I had to be. The nurses had called. Winnie had had a rough night after I left. High fever, shallow breathing. They told me, gently, to come now. When I walked in, she looked small. So small, like she could be carried by the breeze if the window opened. I stood there for a long moment, just watching her sleep. A part of me still loved her. Of course I did. Love like that doesn't vanish overnight. But another part, the deeper, more wounded part, sat with its arms crossed inside me, refusing to move. She opened her eyes. You came, she said, smiling faintly. Of course, I replied, voice even. But there was a weight to my words I knew she heard. We didn't talk about the confession from the night before. Not then. She asked how the kids were. I updated her on the basics. Her mother was flying in tomorrow. The pastor from church had sent his prayers. Our daughter had made a card with tiny pressed flowers on it. Winnie's eyes welled up when I handed it to her. She kissed it and held it to her chest. But under all that, the sweetness, the calm, I was unraveling. Have you ever had your foundation ripped out from under you, but you're still expected to show up? Be kind? Be soft for someone who crushed you? It's like bleeding internally while try to keep the table set for dinner. For the next few days, I kept going. I was there every morning. I held her hand when the pain hit. I read to her when she couldn't sleep. I bathed her, clothed her. She wept a lot. Sometimes she'd start apologizing, not just for Joel, but for everything. For making you feel small when I was chasing big things, she whispered once. For laughing at your dreams when you started that first business. For telling my friends that you were too quiet, too safe. I didn't respond to any of those things. Not because I didn't have feelings, but because I needed time to sort through which of those feelings were mine and which were reactions to someone else's guilt. On the 5th day after the confession, she asked me directly, "Do you hate me now?" I looked at her and answered honestly, "No. But I think I'm grieving two things now. The fact that you're dying and the fact that I wasn't crazy all those years." She closed her eyes, a single tear rolling sideways down her cheek. She didn't argue, didn't justify, just nodded, like she'd been expecting that answer all along. That night, I went home and found one of my old notebooks. It was from the early years of our marriage. I used to write business ideas in it, designs, cost estimates, sketches of houses I dreamed of building one day. On the last page, there was a note Winnie had written in pink ink. To my architect of everything. I believe in you. Always. I stared at that line for a long time. It felt like another version of her. One that maybe did love me in her own messy, imperfect way. One who believed in the idea of me. Even if, eventually, she stopped believing in the reality. A few days later, Winnie passed. It was peaceful. I was holding her hand. She was smiling at a photo of the kids. Her last words were, "Tell them I love them." And I did. I told them. I planned a funeral. I handled everything like a man who had it all together. Inside, I was splintered. You'd think that's where the story ends. Wife dies. Husband mourns. Life moves on. But here's where it takes a turn. 2 months after the funeral, I got a message on Facebook. From Joel. I stared at his name for a full minute before opening it. The message was short. "Hi, Laban. I don't expect a response, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt anyone. Winnie and I, we were both lost. I ended it the day she told me she was going back to fix things with you. I respected that. And I respected you, even if I didn't deserve to. I sat with that for a while. Part of me wanted to drive to wherever he was and punch him in the jaw. But another part, the one that had been through hell and back, realized something else. He had moved on. He had a family now. His own guilt. His own silence to carry. Whatever happened between them, it was over a decade ago. He didn't win anything. He didn't get the love story. I did, and I lived through the unraveling of it. The next twist came a week after that. I found a letter in one of Winnie's locked drawers. It was addressed to me, handwritten, dated 6 months before she died. Laban, if you're reading this, I probably didn't get the courage to tell you everything in person. And for that, I am so sorry. There's no justification for what I did. I was selfish. I was scared. You were always so steady, so good, and I felt like I didn't deserve that kind of love. So I tried to sabotage it. I thought you'd leave me and I'd feel free. But you stayed, and you loved me harder. And I hated myself more for it. I want you to know something. I did love you. Not just the idea of you. You, the man who showed up, the man who built us a life, the man who never once made me feel small when I made you feel invisible. I wish I had been braver. I wish I had told you everything years ago, not on my deathbed. But I was a coward. I was afraid that if you knew the truth, you'd finally stop loving me. And I couldn't bear that. You deserve better. But I hope, somehow, you'll remember the good in me too. Love always. Winnie. I cried for the first time in weeks. Not just for the betrayal, but for the complicated, flawed woman I married, who loved me and hurt me in equal measure. People kept asking if I'd date again, if I'd ever find love again, if I could forgive. And my answer was always the same. I don't know. Because forgiveness isn't a switch. It's not a public speech or a grand gesture. It's a daily choice to stop bleeding on a people who didn't cut you. So I got to work. I poured myself into my business. I expanded it, took on bigger projects, hired younger men, mentored them. I started building community homes, places people could raise kids, start fresh. It felt good to build again, with purpose. I spent more time with my children. I told them stories about their mother, the real ones. Not the saint, not the villain. Just the woman who laughed loudly, danced barefoot in the kitchen, and sometimes made terrible choices, but always loved them. And little by little, I began to feel whole. But life wasn't done yet, because 6 months after her passing, I received a message from someone I never expected. Her sister. She asked to meet for coffee. Said it was important. I agreed, more out of curiosity than anything else. When we met, she looked nervous, kept twisting the ring on her finger. Laban, she said, I need to tell you something Winnie never had the courage to admit. Joel, it wasn't just once. I didn't flinch. I figured, I said. Her eyes widened. You did? Yeah, I replied, stirring my coffee calmly. Because people don't carry 10 years of guilt for a one-night mistake. They carry it when it was more, when it was real, when it was selfish. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know, I said, but it doesn't change who I am now. It just makes me grateful that I got out of it without losing myself. And I meant it. I walked out of that coffee shop with no anger in my chest. Just peace. Because that's the thing they don't tell you about betrayal. It doesn't have to define you. You get to decide what comes after. A year after Winnie passed, people stopped tiptoeing around her name. The calls from well-meaning friends dwindled. The casseroles stopped showing up. Life, as it tends to, moved on for everyone else. But I stayed in the house we had built, the one she picked the curtains for, the one where the kids had taken their first steps. And I found myself in the odd position of missing her and resenting her in the same breath. Grief is strange like that. It doesn't always look like sobbing at midnight or listening to sad songs on repeat. Sometimes it's silent car rides where your mind drifts back to the moment she said, yes, once, and then realizing she meant more than once. Maybe a whole season of your marriage. I never confronted her sister again after that coffee. What was the point? She wasn't telling me for drama. She was clearing her own conscience. And I didn't need more confessions. I had enough to last a lifetime. Instead, I kept rebuilding. Emotionally. Practically. Brick by brick. I expanded my construction company. Not for money, but for meaning. I wanted to be part of people's new beginnings. Couples buying their first homes. Single mothers starting over. Retired men building small cottages to finally rest in. I began to understand what purpose felt like, and that it wasn't about revenge or proving Winnie wrong. It was about becoming a man I respected again. Then one day, out of nowhere, I got an email. From Joel. Again. But this time it was different. He wasn't just apologizing. He was asking for something. Laban, I've heard about the community housing project you started. I run a youth outreach center now, and we're trying to build a new safe house for displaced teens. I wanted to ask if you consider working with us. I know I'm probably the last person you'd want to hear from, but it's not for me. It's for them." I stared at the screen for a long time. Of all the possible outcomes in this bizarre journey, this was not one I saw coming. The man who had once been part of tearing my life apart was now asking me to help build something meaningful. I didn't reply right away. I sat with it, slept on it, asked myself, what kind of man do I want to be now? And the answer came back quietly, the kind who doesn't carry weight he doesn't have to. So I responded, "I'll work with your team. For the teens. Not for you. Keep it professional. We never need to discuss anything personal. Deal?" He responded within minutes. "Deal. Thank you, Laban. Genuinely." And that was that. Over the next few months, we worked together on a few calls, site visits, some late-stage design work. And you know what? Joel had changed. Or maybe he hadn't. Maybe I just finally saw him clearly. He wasn't a villain, just a weak man once, like I'd been a blind one. And now, we were both trying to be better in our own ways. The project completed in record time. The teens moved in. One of them, a 17-year-old girl who had aged out of foster care, gave a little speech at the opening. She said, "This isn't just a house. It's a future." I teared up, not from pride, but from clarity. That's what I'd been missing all those years in the mess of marriage and betrayal. Clarity. About who I was. What mattered. What didn't. A few weeks later, Joel pulled me aside after a final walkthrough. "I meant it, he said. "Back then, I respected you. You were the better man. I just didn't know how to be one yet." I nodded. Didn't shake his hand. Didn't need to. "You don't owe me anything," I said. "But you owe them your best. Make sure you give it." And I walked away. That was the last time I spoke to him. Then, 6 months ago, I met someone. Not on a dating app. Not through friends. Just by chance. At a bookstore of all places, I was buying a biography about a civil engineer I admired. She was in the next aisle over, arguing with the clerk about how there are never enough female inventors featured in history books. Her name's Miriam. She's different from Winnie in every way. Soft where Winnie was sharp. Curious without being controlling. Gentle with my past. Never digging, but always present if I want to talk. I told her everything. Eventually. About Winnie. About the confession. About Joel. About how some nights I still feel a ghost of betrayal that brushes my shoulder. She listened. Really listened. And then she said something I'll never forget. "You don't have to rush to forgive to be free. Sometimes just acknowledging the truth is enough." She's right. Forgiveness isn't a goal. It's a space you create inside yourself when you're ready to stop bleeding. My kids like her. They tell me I smile more. I laugh louder. I sleep better. And I think, finally, I'm at peace. Winnie's memory doesn't haunt me anymore. It just visits gently. On birthdays. In the smell of her favorite tea. In our daughter's laugh. And now, I can let it pass through me without shattering. If you told me 2 years ago that I'd find purpose after all that pain, I wouldn't have believed you. But here I am. Alive. Clear. Whole. And, while I never got the truth on my own terms, I did something better. I built something with the truth instead of letting it bury me. So to anyone out there sitting in the rubble of a broken promise, just know you don't have to destroy yourself to move on. You don't have to hate to heal. Sometimes, healing is just putting one honest brick on top of another and saying, "I'm still here, and I'm still building." And that's enough. Don't forget to subscribe for more confessions, more chaos, and more truth. Only on X Confessions Unlocked.